Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Rebel Alliance podcast. My name is Aaron Bowman and I am your host as always. And today we have a special guest that I'm going to be pulling up here shortly, David Mryland. If you've seen my past interviews with him, you're going to really love what he has to say today. So before we get into all this stuff, let me take care of some housekeeping. If you're looking for more information, there will be a blog post, the descriptions on all the videos. We'll have all of David's contact information, his Telegram group, and everything like that. Also, if you're looking for DIY templates or you're looking to book a consultation time with me, you can do that either at East Coast PMA or the PMA Manifesto. And then lastly, if you're looking to take back some of your computer sovereignty and you are looking to have Jason Bourne style end-to-end encryption and be able to access your data from anywhere in the world, then you want to head over to Start9 and pick up one of their servers. And if you do, you want to use the code Rebel Alliance at checkout. That'll get you 9% off. And it also helps support this show a little bit. So that being said, going to kind of keep the intro short today because I know Dave has a lot of stuff to talk about and he's got a great offer for you as we go through this with some of his courses. I've taken a bunch of his courses. They are really well written. The amount of information you're going to get is just absolutely amazing. And it's going to help you keep bad actors accountable. So that being said, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And at the end of today's conversation, David said he would be willing to entertain some of those questions and answer them for you. Unless it has something to do with associations, then maybe I'll take that. But that being said, I will bring up David now. So again, anything you hear here is not tax or legal advice. It's just one man's opinion on the topic. And I'm sure David has his own disclaimer too. So let me bring up Dave. Dave, we are live. How are you?
Hey, thank you.
All
I'm
right,
doing
David.
all right.
Awesome.
Hey, how about that disclaimer right off the top?
I try to. Let's I love your disclaimer because it kind of reminds me of Star Wars a little bit. So if you want to, give us your disclaimer and then tell the audience kind of like your history, because you have a very you've been doing this for a while, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it shows once you listen to more and more that I have to say, and you go, this guy's got a bad attitude, and it was earned. My name is David Mryland. Nothing you'll hear me say is intended as legal advice. Anything that sounds like that to you, just consider it something somebody else might do on a planet far, far away where the law matters. It doesn't matter here. I prove it on a daily basis. It's March 15th, 2024.
It is almost St. Patty's Day. So, Dave, I guess we'll start at the beginning and then we'll definitely talk about your courses that you have and the amount of data you've put together for people to really hold bad actors accountable. How did you get started in this illegalese and understanding the law and, going on the offense when people are in the wrong?
What sucked me in? It was just about April 15th of 1988. So we're looking at 36 years here coming up next month. 36 years ago, April 15th, the IRS knocked on my front door. And I didn't like the demeanor of the agent, Marty Webb. And I was the world's fastest bartender. I knew every joke, and a real nice guy, got paid to be a nice guy. And but at the same time, I have this temperament, and I didn't like the way I was treated. And so I scheduled a meeting with Marty Webb 3 weeks out. And just before this meeting, I called and said, gosh, I can't make it. We have to reschedule. And another meeting 3 weeks out. And right before the meeting, gosh, I can't make it. We have to reschedule. And I did that a couple times and then got another job and moved away. And by the middle of June, I opened up a tax code for the first time in my life. I'd never heard the word statute. And went to the county library and fished out the tax code. Yeah, monster of a document. when I weigh my 1995 version of Commerce Clearinghouse Tax Code, Volume 1, Volume 2, both about 2 3/4 inches thick rice paper, and then 6 volumes of regulation on top of that. I took it to the grocery store one day. It weighed out at 21.5 pounds, and the government has permission to not speak of it. So you're on your own. But then there's my attitude, and I said, I'm not going to let it scare me. And I went right to the back of the tax code, requirement to report tips, because that's what she said was the controversy there on my doorstep. And the first place I went, section 6053, she also said your tips are 61A, gross income. And of course, I'm not going to forget anything. I was a bartender. And so I went at the tax code and I looked up 6053, requirement to report tips. And it says you got to report tips as defined here, there, and it didn't mention 61A. So the first place I went, I found something fishy. And I kept studying, comparing the tax code to the standard operating procedures of the IRS. In August of 92, I got a full-time booth or office at the Institute for American Study in Tacoma because of my self-acquired knowledge, and my job there was to help people who got in trouble with frivolous filing penalties, administrative back and forths with the IRS, nothing in court, and didn't get anywhere regarding a very particular set of statutes and regulations that comprised my heaviest lifting arguments, because I found some things that are wrong with enforcement. And I said, we're getting nowhere. What do you want to go to tax court and accuse them of it? And a bunch of people said, yeah. So I lined up my clients and wrote a boilerplate, and a bunch of them took it to tax court and got nowhere. You won't get a discussion. It's so ridiculous, it's hard to listen to. Section 83 explains how to tax the entire workforce. Section 83. You can't have it. They won't talk about it. They'll penalize you thousands of dollars for arguing it, but they can't deny a word of the argument that I construct out of its terms, which is all property is cost. That's the hard one. That's the one that frees the slaves. If my labor is my cost, then I have no income or profit to tax. Right. So it's the big one. And when I found Section 83, I said, if this applies to me, it's not being enforced. I shut the books and went to the University of Washington Law Library and looked up about 70 or 80 cases under Section 83. And lo and behold, the courts and tax court and the IRS say that Section 83 is how to determine gross income. So it's not the IRS that determines your paycheck's gross income. It's not the IRS that determines anything else's gross income when you sell your services. It's Section 83, period. They don't deny it. 5 times to the Supreme Court by October of 98, 3 times to the Supreme Court in 2018, all over the same set of statutes that you'll find on the homepage of takefromcaesar.us.
Yep.
Takefromcaesar.us has that group of statutes and the 3 conclusions I can prove with those statutes, and they won't talk about them. On the, wevgov.com/orth, capital O, small RTH, wevgov.com/orth is a review and tutorial of and about the Robert Orth versus Commissioner case. He appealed to the 7th Circuit Court. He was penalized $4,000 for arguing just those statutes on the homepage of takefromcaesar.us. And on that page, wevgov.com/orth, you have the exchange of briefs between me and the DOJ in his case. And you have the DOJ's response to show that although having had the arguments for 26 years, they can't talk about the provisions relied upon. They don't rebut the argument, and then the judge issues their final opinion on appeal. It's 3 judges, and they didn't mention the statutes relied upon. They did not interpret them, and he lost, and he was penalized $4,000, which I told him would happen.
Right.
And he filed the briefing to impress upon them that he doesn't believe he has a duty. He knew they'd never decide the arguments because they gut the IRS using just the tax code. So I told him they'll penalize you, and the only thing I can promise you out of this is that you'll be a little bit harder to indict if you have somebody that actually went to court all the way to the Supreme Court and was stonewalled entirely on the arguments they say they have. And that goes back all the way to 1994, my boilerplate brief. So this is nothing new. It was in another century that I wrote my 1994 treatise, the first quarter of 94. That's still the set of findings I rely upon. And what I do with them, or attempt to do, is to negate the notion in any IRS criminal investigation agent, the notion in their head that I think I have a legal duty. Because if I don't believe I have a duty, they know I'm innocent of tax crimes. And so I have this complaint I filed New Year's of 06 with 80 members of Congress, 58-page memorandum, 33-page racketeering complaint, and somebody, if they chose to, they could join the complaint saying, I took the courses on this, I read the complaint, I look at Section 83 and I think he's right. And so please count me, and it goes to the right people in Congress, please count me in as a co-complainant to this complaint. Hell, I'm a co-victim. I've been victimized the same way as he's complaining of in his 58-page memorandum. And when I say memorandum, I write very tidy documents.
You write really good documents. I've read a lot of your stuff. I've bought a couple of your courses, and the stuff is really, really well written, and it's not some of this we'll call it patriot mythology stuff that you get online that people are trying to prey on people's fears and get them to buy some course. It's legitimate legal arguments drafted correctly, which makes a huge difference when you're going against these people.
In the box litigation, the law is perfect. The judge, the IRS, the DOJ, you're a citizen of the United States. Okay, let's see what the law says you can do to me. Nobody else argues that way. And so nope. I have nothing in common with David Champion, Pete Hendrickson, Payman Mataheta. My findings are derived from research that's far advanced over and above where they stopped studying. And when you read my findings, you're going to see that I've been a lot more places. Now, I think it's at the top of takefromcaesar.us. I have a YouTube channel called Take From Caesar.
You do?
And it's an archive of tutorials that are just ground floor, put your feet on the ground firmly, understand the law, look at your rights, with my seasoned impression of how they act, how they're going to treat you, what they think of you. Your relationship with government is way different than you perceive it. Government is not a strict cop. Government is a car thief with pistols in prison. It's not a formidable relationship of any nature. It's toxic all the way. They know they're stealing. They can't deny it. I'm the one that can actually take my findings all the way to court and show you they can't deny a word of it. But if you don't have a jury there, you lose, because the judge on a lien or levy, they give the judgment to the government every single time. But when it's a criminal case, my stuff has been used to try to get a verdict of not guilty. I don't believe I have a duty. Here are my briefs. I filed at this place, that place, this place, that place. Everybody knows, and I don't know what we're doing here because I don't have a duty. I want to be able to sculpt that individual out of the person that comes to me and says, mine is flapping in the breeze because I didn't file tax returns. What am I looking at here?
Yep.
And I'll tell them the truth. I preach caution. Don't file anything H&R Block says you won't get away with. Period.
Right.
Who wants a relationship with a car thief? It's
Exactly.
not
Nobody.
they're not a strict cop. They're a car thief with pistols and prisons.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so you don't poke the bear. With all my skills, all my abilities that you'll see in my documents and hear in my teachings, I can't get justice. Maybe in a criminal case, I might be able to convince a criminal investigations agent that they shouldn't mount a criminal defense, or they should shut down the criminal investigation they already have going. Um, Maybe it goes to a grand jury. And my findings, the way they're packaged, have prevented, uh, a handful of times when the grand jury said, no, we're not going to hand down an indictment on somebody that didn't file returns, didn't pay the money, but the DOJ comes in there and stumbles all over these 35 provisions. What's the problem?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's typical. They make up rules that clearly, Section 83, as you put it, explains all this stuff, and they just choose to ignore it because if one person figures it out, then all of a sudden everybody else might be doing the same
It,
thing, and it's just
it,
one of those things where, um,
it
I don't have
in,
a huge issue with paying taxes, so to speak. I do hate the fact that I can't dictate where my money goes to. Like, I don't want to fund a war in Ukraine, but when there's stuff here, the money can be used for. But it's typical bureaucracy where it's hey, we have these rules here, but we're just not going to talk about those. We're going to talk about these here, even though you're right. We're not going to side with you because we want to put our oppressive thumb on top of you.
when you said they're going to ignore it, I think I need to underscore that a bit with a few factoids. Section 83 is in the tax code.
Right.
Tax court and federal appellate courts all say it explains how to tax all property transferred in connection with the performance of services. I've been to court and been to court and been to court and been to court. They can't talk about it. So a statute that explains how to tax you, they can't talk about it. It's off limits. And you accuse them right in your petition, in your complaint, whatever. Your Honor, they don't train on it. They don't have a written interpretation of the statute that explains how to tax me. They don't train their staff on it. If you asked for it under the Freedom of Information Act, I want a copy of any and all documents, digital and otherwise, PDF, PowerPoint, paper, manila paper, everything that you can write on or type on or whatever, copy. I want a copy of the documents you use to instruct your agents and or officers and or bureaucrats or general counsel on the operation of Section 83 and its application to fact, when all I've done is work a week.
Yep.
They don't have a single piece of paper on the governing statute, and they will penalize you if you argue it. It's a law that is off limits, that they say in Internal Revenue Ruling 2007-19. Section 83A provides for the explanation of what is to be included in gross income when an employee or independent contractor sell their services.
Yeah.
And there's no and to it. It explains how to tax you. Now, everything is gross income, 61A. Come on in. And if you don't go for that, they'll penalize you. They will not hear you. So in my treatise, which is comprised of several heavy lifting arguments, Section 83 is one of them. There are a couple other arguments that I construct out of a group of statutes that apply to Social Security. That's the bulk of my arguments, is the many provisions I cite to build an argument that Social Security has never been written to apply to U.S. citizen. You called me a U.S. citizen. Here's your proof in statute in the definition of citizen. Here, that I'm expressly excluded from Social Security when I'm a citizen of the United States. And you know they're going to tell you that you are one. I got a million cases that says you are, fought by people that said, I'm a non-resident alien. I'm not a citizen of the U.S. Yes, you are. And you got a million cases.
Yeah.
So I grabbed those. Those are in my favor because the tax code's never been written to apply to a citizen of the U.S. Now, we're about to take a quantum leap forward into my 1994 treatise.
Yeah.
The first argument, you have several chapters that they do to you. Do to me? Yes. Me, capital gains. Me, compensation for services. Me, I owe FICA. Me, my employer owes matching FICA if I owe FICA. Me, Federal Unemployment Tax Act to benefit me if I run out of work. And chapter 2 is me, Social Security, self-employed. There's 5 chapters. What was that, 4? Chapter 2, 21, 23, and chapter 2, 21, 23, and there's 2 taxes in chapter 21. FICA that I pay, it's an income tax. It says it's hereby imposed upon employment income, so it's an income tax. And then right halfway through the chapter is section 3111 that imposes the excise tax of matching FICA on my employer. So in those 3, there are 4 taxes that they do to us. And I did not mention capital gains. The Social Security chapters, leave them all together because you have the definition of citizen in each of those chapters that expressly excludes citizens of the United States. So what I'm doing first is saying, fine, tax code, sure, that's me, but you can't double tax me. This one's not me. I want to avoid double taxation.
Exactly.
So the only chapter I'm left with now, after I brief that, is chapter 1. Section 1, the graduated income tax, where you have all those tax brackets that go on for page after page after page after page till you get to section 1H, capital gains. It's all in section 1. Okay, so I only owe the section 1 tax. I'm left with chapter 1. Where's the definition of citizen? I want to see if I'm excluded from chapter 1 too. And there's no definition of citizen in statute. The 16th Amendment says Congress can lay and collect this tax. It has to be a statute, and nowhere in chapter 1 do they identify someone with a political description like the citizen in Social Security chapters. Political boundaries, the U.S. possessions, not a citizen of the United States, particular citizenship they speak of. But in chapter 1, it's vanilla, it's blank. And they needed a provision that said U.S. citizens owe this tax. So they wrote a regulation. The Secretary of the Treasury wrote 26 CFR 1.1-1. That's not a statute. That's a regulation. And if without that regulation, there's nothing that said, I, a citizen of the United States, owe this tax. You imposed it with a regulation in violation of the 16th Amendment that says Congress can lay and collect the tax. In the Robert Orth case, this is like Exhibit A. Look at what I got here. They didn't even mention Section 1 or Regulation 1.1-1 in the DOJ's reply or in the court's decision on a briefing of this particular argument. So first things first, Social Security doesn't apply to citizens of the U.S. Leaves me all alone with Chapter 1. Chapter 1, only I'm not mentioned there. There's no mention of citizens of the United States. Aha, yes, there is. We have this regulation. It has to be a statute. And what I just did to the IRS is rip its arms off and beat it to death with them. I just stripped the IRS of all authority over a citizen of the United States. But let's say there was a definition in statute in Chapter 1. Section 83A explains how to tax all compensation for services. How does Section 83 operate in your conclusion that my pay is gross income? Can't talk about
That's crazy.
it. And you
That's
get
absolutely
nowhere.
nuts.
30 years plus. You
Yep.
get nowhere with it. And it's as screwy as you get. You should be able to rely on statute. But the reason Section 83 is such a sticky wicket is because, number one, it's universally applicable to the entire workforce. Number two, it does not say that the whole paycheck is gross income. It says here's the name of it: property transferred in connection with the performance of services. Sounds like a paycheck to me.
Yep.
I'm the only one in history who's ever written about Section 83 and explained it. I wrote a manual about it, almost 100 pages long, in the first quarter of 94.
Wow.
And we used it as Exhibit A 5 times up to the Supreme Court. And I'm the only one who's ever written about it, except a couple people you can tell they plagiarized my argument. They're citing the same case. Yeah. So Section 83 says, if in connection with the performance of services property is transferred, the excess of the value of that property over the amount paid is gross income, not the whole paycheck. The excess over the amount paid. And regulation defines the amount paid as the value of any money or property that I paid for my paycheck. Any money or property. Any.
Huh. Interesting.
The Supreme Court has ruled 5 times. The term any is all inclusive. Once the law says any, to exclude something from any, the law has to thereafter provide, there's an exception to this. And the law does not. Any money or property paid, labor is property. Supreme Court says it's the most sacred and inviolable property of man. It's the basis of all other property. Without labor, we're all wearing loincloths, chasing beetles with clubs for dinner.
Yeah, it's true.
Everything's built on labor.
Yep.
Look around. It's sad, but everything's built on it. It's the labor of man. Man moves the planet. And they look at that and say, nope, except labor, because you didn't buy your labor before you sold it, so you don't have a cost in your labor.
That's a good point.
And my argument, well, it's not science. It's progressive. You don't have to have science. You just have to say something often enough, and people do what you say because your voice is louder. Anyway, the excess of the value of that property, the property transferred for my services, that's my paycheck, the excess of the value of that property over the amount paid, over the value of the property I gave for that paycheck, my labor. What's its value? My labor's value, and this is how to determine the value of property of whatever nature, is through the terms of an arm's length transaction. Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, page 109, U.S. versus Cartwright, Supreme Court, 1973, said of a transaction negotiated between two unrelated parties acting in their own best interest under no compulsion to buy or sell, all relevant facts disclosed. That's me and my customer when I'm an independent contractor. That's me and my employer when I sell my labor to my employer. They don't have to buy it. I don't have to sell it. All relevant facts disclosed. There's no fraud here. And they agree that, well, for being a pipeline engineer here in Seattle down at Todd Shipyard, we'll pay you $45 an hour. But if they look at me again and say, so you want to be a engineer on the Alyeska pipeline out in the middle of the freezer north of Fairbanks, we'll pay you $45 an hour. And that's when I say, unrelated party, I don't have to take that. And I'm not working in a deep freeze for less than $105 an hour. It's what the rest of them are making. The market just set the price. It was set by what me and another person agree upon as my labor. They might tell me to take a hike. It's their prerogative. But that's an example of the bending of an arm's length transaction to fit the two minds that need to agree to establish the fair market value for the property that's about to be transferred. So only the excess of the value of my paycheck over gross income. The excess, yeah, here's an excess. Hey, Dave, I got to tell you, as your boss, I'm awfully impressed. You sold more vacuum cleaners in this quarter than anybody else in the company. Here's a $4,000 bonus. What? Really? Really? Wow. That I didn't contract for. It wasn't within the contract value of my labor. That's gross income. It's excess over the value of my labor because it's given and received outside of the arm's length transaction.
Which makes complete sense. And real quick, I just want to chime in here. We've got people watching online. So if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat if you are on Facebook or YouTube. If you're watching on Rumble, I will have to get those questions later. And then at the end of today's discussion, we will answer any of those questions that you put in the comments. Or if you just want to say hi, you can do that too. But for those of you who are just joining us, we have Dave Mryland on with us. He is, as those who have been listening can really see his very diverse and in-depth background when it comes to certain legalese, when it comes to taxes and that sort of thing, and holding people accountable, which we're going to get into soon, because he has one good course, the drive-by litigation, which we definitely need to talk about, because I think any of you that are parents that are watching this will definitely find that useful when it comes to holding local officials holding them accountable for the way that they act and behave, and that goes for teachers and board of eds also. So, Dave, didn't mean to cut you off there and jump in, but continue. This is, I think, a lot of people that look to the state, national, sovereign citizen movements for this anti-tax stuff will start to really see that there's a correct way of doing it. And that, you're battle tested. You've gone through the ringer. You've been fighting this since the 90s. And, like you said, take what H&R will give you, so to speak.
Yeah. The government calls me a sovereign citizen because nobody listens to sovereign citizen. They can't afford people listening to me. I have nothing in common with it. From what I can tell, I'm doing it. I learned what I know about law directly from judges. It's called case law. Case law is an ocean of free seminars about the law. You 100%. Can't read too much case law. It's why I cite case law everywhere I go. So it's not, you don't have to take my word for it, Your Honor. I got 10 appellate cases right there that say so.
Yep. And I think you say that in the courses I have from you, there's always like a little blurb on the top that says you can never read too much case law, which is right. Great advice. Yep.
Because it's not my word now, is it, Your Honor? It's exactly. The appellate court that you have to obey. So case law is a weapon. And as soon as you contradict the IRS, they'll flood you with a bunch of tax protester case law. You're wrong, Citizen Breath, and get out of our office or we're going to penalize you. Better get those returns filed. And that's all you hear from them. But when you come up with law they can't explain, they put on this different face and they open their mouths less. That's always good. And when from my work, you'll see the briefing back and forth on wevgov.com/orth, capital O, small RTH. wevgov.com/orth is a 2017 exchange of briefs between me and the DOJ. They've had the findings for 26, 27 years at that point. And I just humiliate them saying, you're attorneys, right? You say you are. What, the law, smelling salts, take your pick. And it's that bad. With those 35 or 40 provisions on the homepage of takefromcaesar.us or woven into the brief you see on wevgov.com/orth, with those in the same arguments since 93, I've been leaving them speechless. So I'm not giving you advice, and I'm not telling you, here, file 2 of these and call me in the morning, but not if the IRS objects. Because if they object, I'm hitting the highway. I'm out of here. And you can't find them again.
Right.
There's a guy that took off to Hawaii from Utah, Albert. I can't remember his last name. That's progress. I'm recovering. From Utah, he had the Al Carter. He had the IRS pink letters.
Yep.
And then the IRS cracked down on that, and he's out of here. Then you have the non-resident alien lady who later got indicted and went to prison, but she took off to Hawaii when all the non-resident alien penalties started to rain down in 1994 and 5, and so they're just not around. I want to know the person I'm listening to has a strategy in case an indictment comes down.
Right.
And you're wrong. Here's what you want. I want to know the person that I'm listening to has seen over and over again what prevents an indictment. I don't want to have to defeat an indictment. I want to prevent one.
Yeah, and I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that sell, we'll call them quote unquote, air quotes, courses online, or they sell that silver bullet that people are looking for. During the height of the pandemic, I saw people buying affidavits for $250, and they were told that if you have this affidavit, you don't have to wear a mask. And I was like, that's not really how affidavits work. But hey, sorry you spent your money on that. And and that's I work with this group called the PMA Manifesto, and we really kind of shed the light on unincorporated associations because there was a lot of bad information out there. And, that got a lot of kickback from a lot of people because they thought they were told one thing, like you could be a faith-based association and under the IRS tax code 508C1A, you're tax exempt. And that tax code is specifically for churches. And so people thought they were running a non-taxable association when they weren't. So I think it's a great point that you bring up that whoever you're going to listen to, you want to, one, be able to get a hold of, and two, know that they have an actual plan or that they've actually are seasoned enough that they've dealt with some of this stuff before, and they're not just going to take your money and leave you high and dry.
And what's my plan? If you haven't filed returns or paid the IRS what they say you owe, my plan of attack is you go to H&R Block and you pay them to get an absolute worst case scenario and an absolute best case scenario for the trouble that you're in trying to get aligned back up with the government. Because once you have a relationship with the IRS, the body chemistry in the relationship you have with your children, your spouse, your friends, it changes. And not everybody's ready for that.
Right.
To where you know that I'm not fit to be around people. I'm angry all the time, and that's their wage. You're paying them their wage.
Yep.
When you're angry all the time, you're paying the price they've demanded, and then just to get the hell away from them. How much? Okay.
Exactly.
Pay him and get rid of him. I can't stand it anymore. And it's what they do to families. And I've watched it for years and years. And I've worked in several criminal cases aside from these trips to the Supreme Court. Those were all civil, out of tax court onto appellate court and then to the Supreme Court. And I've seen both sides, and once they get that indictment, the hardest damn thing to do is to get the court to look at it. But you're trying to get the court to look at you and become convinced that you don't believe you have a duty. You won't get an interpretation of the law. They're immune to the law. You can't have it. I've tried and tried and tried. Don't even try. You can argue it and then take a step back and say, see, they don't even have an interpretation of the law, and you're sending people to prison?
Yep. We're seeing a lot of that lately, not just with taxes. You can look at the January 6th stuff. You can look at what they just did to Trump in New York when it was a completely
and with the masks
real estate
and
transaction.
And the vaccines, you can't come in here. Yes, I can't. No, you can't. Officer. And it's butt-headed ignorance on their part, because there's a few things you can show them that make them go, call legal. Okay, good. The store manager is going to have a conference with the legal department. Yep. Okay. Yep. 100%. Well, tell you what, manager, while you're doing that, I'm going to go check out the produce. I'll be right down there and shine them on.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing too, is like you said, the education part. You can't read enough court cases, but a lot of people, they're just happy to watch their Netflix, and they're fat, dumb, and stupid, and they just want to hang out and watch TV and binge watch stuff. And then, they get all worked up when they realize, I think like a lot of us during this whole pandemic, it was like, wait a second, I can't come in here without doing this. I've got to do that. Like, this doesn't seem right, but I know internally it's not right, but I don't know where to turn to the law to show that it's not right. And I think that's where your case, your courses you've put together, and for those of you who are interested in the courses, we'll talk about that soon. You get them in a thumb drive. Everything's right there that you need, audio and stuff like that and examples, but you really give yourselves the tools to be able to defend yourself when these people are doing stupid stuff and they're just violating laws.
And the people that are stuck to the couch, they're going to go from, I can watch what I want, to, excuse me, servant, can I watch this show that's coming on?
Exactly. Yep.
That's the difference. And you can sleep right through it till the frog's in boiling water.
Yep.
I did my best. I got 35, 36 years into this. And my pen is as sharp as anybody at the DOJ. When it comes to a tax memorandum, like one judge up here in Washington State put it, you're obviously no neophyte to the judicial system. Your pleadings are in the top 1 percentile of everything I see in this court. Okay, so I want the other person that I'm writing against, I want them to look at my paper and at first glance go, who did this work for this guy?
Yep, exactly.
I want it to just knock their socks off, and I want to be right. And so I always want to rely on the law, and as seldom as necessary, traverse to the Constitution. I like a statutory argument instead.
Yep.
Now, I'm not a nice guy. As a bartender, I was paid to be a nice guy, from a biker bar that I worked on right up to a downtown luxury lounge with gold jewelry and suits and BMWs and Porsches in the parking lot. And the attitude serves me. I'm not going to let a perfectly good bartending career go to waste. And so the flash drive that Aaron mentioned is on bgbgbg.us, bgbgbg.us. She wanted a family to GG. She married a man from Fiji, and I don't mean maybe. Right away, they had a baby, to whom they go BG. Anyway, I wrote that. I got bored one day, obviously. Anyway, BG is a splash page that explains the contents of the flash drive, or you can click on the link on that page, and it'll take you to my YouTube channel for an on-screen video navigation of the contents of the flash drive. So all you have to do is sit there and watch.
And there is a lot on it, guys and gals that are watching. And if you watch the replay, there is a ton of data on there.
It's not a research dump. This is the results of research.
100%.
It's stuff out of my office that I read and I kept. I'm not going to give you 50 Supreme Court cases that aren't germane to the things that I teach. I'm going to teach you what hits the nail on the head. I got 2 courses on writing and filing citizens' criminal complaints. One of those 2 courses is called Drive-By Litigation, where you use a certain cadence to file particular criminal complaints against a public servant, which is what I like to file against. And the complaints are written impeccably.
They are. Dave, can we go into that next? Because I think a lot of people are going to find that very interesting, because I myself am currently using that with the town that I live in because of some leaked text messages that went out by one of the town officials, basically threatening that they can bust the kneecaps of the residents of the town. So I'm holding their feet to the fire. I think there's others that will find this information very useful, unless you want to go in a different direction. But I think this course is really kind of gives it back, the power back to the people at that local level, especially just to get used to writing these complaints and seeing where, like, oh yeah, that person's not acting right. They're in an elected position, or, that school teacher's, providing pornographic material to my child. And I know it's not right, but how do I enforce that feeling that it's not right?
Sure. I obviously don't have what it takes to scare them. They're walking right into the school and doing this to my children.
Yeah.
And so I need more.
Yep.
Handcuffs are scarier than me. I never got a single ounce of respect from public servants until I started writing and filing citizens' criminal complaints against judges and prosecutors. And then it was a different day. oh, it's my turn for a hearing. I got to go to court today. And I walk into the court after the metal detector, and the level of discussion in the court drops a few decibels. Oh, it's the guy that filed the criminal complaint against the judge. Okay, it's marked. As soon as I entered the courtroom, it was a different discussion. And it was like that ever since I started. I said, this is neat. Washington criminal rule, limited jurisdiction courts. That means not felony court, but misdemeanor court. Rule 2.1, citizens criminal complaint. I said, this sounds like me. I started studying the criminal code. How does the prosecutor get somebody in jail with just one paragraph on one piece of paper? I'm over here with 15-page memorandums, my client's filing and stuff, and they still go to jail. And so I started studying the prosecutor's job, and I read a bunch of the criminal code, the stuff that might pertain in a popular or frequent type of occurrence with the constabular. And I found official misconduct, mail fraud, unlawful imprisonment, all these different statutes that described stuff that I'd seen happen. It's why I'm in this. I'm in it for justice, and I'm fighting real hard to get this to not happen again and that to not happen again, get that person out of jail. But I read these statutes, criminal statutes, I go, this is where the government lives. It's its home address.
Yeah.
And so once you read these statutes several times, you understand that if somebody does this, this, and this, and then puts it in the mail, 18 USC 1341, mail fraud. All right. If somebody says, hey, vote for me because traditional marriage as president, you bet. Traditional marriage, vote for me, and you can donate at my website. And you go to their website, I hereby donate to this guy because traditional marriage is it with this person. And they get into office and they go, oh yeah, queers can marry. Isn't that wire fraud? They used they lied to me and got me to use the internet to give them money from a direct solicitation. If it's a fraud that affects a financial institution, it's a max of 30 years in prison. Otherwise, it's 20. So a criminal complaint for mail fraud against that candidate would be apropos. I filed one.
Yep.
Thereabouts 2009, first days in office. And anyway, you look at their conduct and then you look back at the statutes you've read. They're teaching sex to children. Where did they get permission to do that? When I was in school and when my younger brother was in school, when my nieces and nephews were in school, this is never taught to them. How come it's taught to my grandchild? You know the difference.
Yep.
Right around 2000, suddenly sex, politics, and children is one topic. And it slapped me in the face. What do you do? Stay away from my children, first things first. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I could turn back to you and know my children are safe. But we've got issues here. We have to resolve them in my favor, or we're going to resolve them in my favor. And I'm not one to be pushed around. And children have rights also. And I take enormous exception, and now it's all exposed as intentional, of this constant erosion of an insult upon childhood innocence. We're going to turn you in. We're going to turn you into somebody your parents can't stand.
Yeah, and
try to be a family then, punk.
Yeah, and it was just in the news too. I forgot what state it was in, but they had a we'll call it, for underground, for lack of a better description, for third graders, this gender identity and sexually explicit information for these kids that are in the third grade. So they're what, 9, 10 maybe?
Yeah, I know how to spell that. It's Oregon.
Is that where it was?
I think it was in Oregon.
Yeah. And, if, I haven't had to use the, what is it? The lewd act with the child. I know there's a state statute here for that. I can't remember what it is. federal wise, but it's one of those things where I'm just waiting to file that because it's
Now, what Aaron is talking about is one of the courses on the flash drive. It has several courses. Read
yeah,
the contents there on bgbgbg.us. And there's a course on getting the filth out of schools. It's in with a bunch of other courses if you buy the flash drive, or you can go to drivebylitigation.com, drivebylitigation.com, and for $25, you can download the course that is only about the schools, about how I would aggressively and obnoxiously knock flat on their ass any. And back to the point, at a certain time, that wasn't taught. That means at a certain time, they had to have gotten permission. Where's your permission to speak to children about A, B, and C, and X, Y, Z, birds and bees, and lubricant? Where's your permission? They never got the permission. They just started doing it.
exactly.
That's the first hitch in their giddy up. They need permission for what they teach. They're only authorized to give the kids an education. And so you go, excuse me, that's not an education. That's unauthorized conduct to deprive a child of a right to an education. That's official misconduct. That's a gross misdemeanor here in Washington. Colorado has first and second degree official misconduct. So you engaged in unauthorized conduct to deprive the child of a right. And they go, hey, we're exempt from that. No, you're exempt from this law over here. Communication with a minor for immoral purposes. This is official misconduct. What you can and can't do on the job. It's a gross misdemeanor, and I filed a criminal complaint against you. So this course outlines my approach to this problem using the tactics in drive-by litigation, where you start with the evidence. I want to get, in fact, I think there's a video about this on my YouTube channel, Take from Caesar, where you get the evidence first.
Yep.
I want witnesses' testimony, children to swear to an affidavit that says on a certain day they taught me about ABC filth. And I want maybe a Zoom video captured from when they were doing distance learning, whatever. I want to look at the school, probably where my kids go. I don't have any children, but this is for you. I'd have been on this a lot earlier if I had children of my own to protect, but it just hadn't come up on my radar. And I took a few weeks to stew about this, and I thought, here's what you do.
Which is good because, during, the pandemic, a lot of parents that don't homeschool and send their kids off to school, I think really were, just at awe what was actually being taught in the schools. And then you had all these, people saying go after their bond and go after, an affidavit.
Sure.
But none of it has teeth. None of it has a bite. And what you teach really has teeth that sink in and really puts them back on their heels to be like,
I'm not nice about it. And,
exactly. And you can't be.
Public servants put dark clouds over our shoulder to follow us home. I want to do the same thing to them. Now, I want evidence. I want testimony from witnesses, students, and I want a photocopy of what they put in the library at school. And I want to talk to the parents of whoever has a child that's willing to be a witness. And we all get together and agree that we're all going to assert these rights and be specific. If somebody says, I'm not comfortable with alleging that particular crime. Over here, sure. And over here, yeah, they committed those, but that's a bit of a stretch for me. That's the way it goes. It's not my complaint. It's not my instruction. It's what feels like complaining about. But let's say nobody objects to the charges that you'd like to see. So I have my first criminal complaint and I put all my evidence behind it. And I make like 7 or 8 copies of it with an originally notarized criminal complaint on top that has me, a parent, that person, a parent, that person, a parent, this parent, this parent, this person, and this child, this child, this child, this child, this child as complainants. They're here to complain versus then you got the name of this teacher, name of that teacher, and the name of the principal. And it gets into the criminal complaint saying they're engaged in a pattern of conduct that's lasted for X number of months, X number of years, and it's in violation of state law. We're here to complain about it. But first, let me tell you who the hostile witnesses are. And then you write the name of everybody on the school board and the name of everybody in the teachers' union administration. How do you like me now? What that does is it drags them this close to the fire. You're not waving handcuffs at them like you are the teachers, but you're naming them as hostile witnesses because they're in charge of what the teachers are doing every day, hands-on with the children. So I put my criminal complaint for official misconduct, and I go ahead and allege under the lewd conduct statute that they're exempt from, and I make the court tell me they're exempt. So I have my evidence, my state criminal complaint, and then I go to the district attorney maybe, or county superior court to the criminal counter, and I file that onto the record, and I have my other copies, and I get them all stamped, received, for what day that was filed. And then I leave the courthouse with all these. And then on top of all these, I put my federal criminal complaint. Federal? Yeah.
Yep.
They teach the children these things. Why? And don't answer quickly. Why do they do this? They do it for a paycheck.
Yep. 100%.
Take everything else out of it. Oh, it's putrid, it's rude, it's vile, it's corrupt and filthy. Yeah, but it's also they're making money. Okay, so number one, they're making a paycheck. How? By violating state law in a pattern of conduct that's lasted how many months? That's called racketeering.
Yeah, good point. That's a great point.
That's bad news. That's called a public nuisance. Under federal law, though, it's racketeering. They're using the banking system to launder their proceeds. So it's bank fraud and money laundering, racketeering. And I know of all these statutes. I've been writing criminal complaints for 20 years.
Yep.
And so I put my federal criminal complaint against these teachers on top of that stack. And I got several copies left. And then I go and I file that with the Department of Justice and get the DOJ to stamp my remaining copies received. And then I take my remaining copies and I go back to County Superior Court. There's going to be a day of the week where they hear petitions for restraining orders for a battered woman or a mom and dad that know that their child associates with this child and that child deals drugs. And so I want a restraining order against that child associating with my child. Whatever reason there might be to keep two parties apart.
Yep.
It's the temporary restraining order calendar. And I would go to that court and take and fill out they got pockets on the wall. You take this form, that form, this form, you fill them all out, you make your copies, and you get your remaining copies all ready to go. And then you take them to the clerk's counter and you file your civil petition for a restraining order against these teachers. Got any hostile witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. Next page. Okay, so in the federal complaint, they're named as hostile witnesses. And now they got a petition for a restraining order with hostile witnesses. And the people that keep seeing their name listed as a hostile witness, they're getting further and further from enthusiasm to protect the teachers.
Yep.
And so you hit the court with that, and you got your hearing on the first day. And you're asking for a restraining order against the school. I want the school shut down. It's a public nuisance and a racketeering scheme, and they're breaking the law to corrupt the children, and I want it done right now, post haste.
Yep.
You won't get it closed on the first day, but what has to happen? In 2 weeks, there's going to be a hearing where the people you've listed as defendants have to come in and defend themselves against that order becoming permanent. That this person has to stay off the school grounds. This person is barred from contact with my child. My child too, Your Honor. I'm a parent on that petition. Okay, you're ganging up on them so
Yep.
that you got kids that go to this school and you got slimy teachers that go to this school against whom you and your children have a criminal complaint with the state and with the Fed that no one can refute. You got the goods, the receipts, the evidence right there. Here's what they're doing in the library, Your Honor.
Yep. So, Dave, do you think using this
just
tactic?
just as I'm rolling here.
Do you think
and
that?
So,
no, go
so
ahead.
in
Sorry, you
2
just
weeks,
broke up for a second.
In 2 weeks, there's going to be a hearing, and those people have to come in to defend themselves against a request for a restraining order against them setting foot on school property or in a school bus on a field trip or anything. And they have to come in and protect themselves, and you record everything and you have it transcribed because they're facing a criminal complaint. You get them on the stand. Is it true that this day you said this to these children? And you're fishing for it. Fifth Amendment.
Yep.
You're trying to get the person on the stand to say Fifth Amendment. This is a civil hearing. They're going to say Fifth Amendment because you're criminal complaining, but this is a civil matter. So
Correct.
If they say Fifth Amendment, you can infer guilt. If they say Fifth Amendment, you look at the judge and you go, see?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so you hit them with the hard questions and the evidence behind those affidavits. And then you get it all transcribed, and you ask the court again. They've had 2 weeks to prepare, Your Honor. They can't deny a word of this. In fact, they uttered Fifth Amendment. You were here for it. I was here for it. We all saw it. And so we want the court to acknowledge that these children, these several right here, and their parents have a criminal complaint on file against these teachers and these administrators. These children have a right against forced association.
Yep, 100%.
And I charge here and now that their constitutional right against forced association is bigger than the contract that the teachers have with the school. And so I want the teachers barred from entry upon the property so that my child will be whole in their right against forced association with a public servant they filed criminal complaints against.
Yep.
And then you take all of that and you go to the school board and say, boom, and you got 5 other copies. Okay, so everyone gets a copy, and you're petitioning the school board or whoever for decertification of the teachers.
Yep.
And you got a bunch of people they work with, the teachers union and the who the heck was the other one, the teachers union and the school board, whoever's listed as hostile witnesses. None of those people are going to speak up to protect the teachers.
Nope.
And so you've petitioned to decertify the teacher, see what they give you. And then you take all of that with a record, a cover letter about the occurrence, about your hearing before them, what you complained of, and you go to your state legislator with a statute that I wrote. It's in the course that pulls sex and politics directly out of school with the notion that their parents can only do better.
Yeah,
that's
true.
The parents can only do better and take it all away from them. Or that's the statute I wrote. This is your statute. And so pat it if you want. But I wrote a statute to drive it home that this is what I think should happen. It's a gross misdemeanor if you mention anything other than boy or girl, man, woman. Gross misdemeanor, which is a year in jail, $5,000 max. But under my statute, it's a minimum of 90 days in jail. Mandatory sentence. And you lose your job. You're decertified. Because we got a bunch of kids that are there at the wall in the classroom looking at the list of things the teacher can't say, going, oh, he said that today too. Oh, he said that too. Okay. Yep. And put the children in charge as witnesses. We're going to manage our government. They got no business talking to you about things that make you uncomfortable. We're going to solve that problem. And I'm not nice about any of this. And you can do to your statute what Florida did to theirs. They went too soft. They said, after 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And I'm over here going, excuse me, I have a sword,
Yep.
and I dare you to pull that third grade crap on me.
Yeah, and
You
that's what I
get
think is important about your courses is the fact that these are actual remedies. Everybody always says, "Well, oh, there's nothing we can do, or there'll never be any change," or And I tell people all the time, "Listen, you just got to start at the local level. There's more than just one or two of you, more than
with an
likely."
with an attorney,
Yeah.
so that from the very beginning, it's organized as they can see it happening over the course of the next several weeks.
Yep.
So it's
And
organized their way.
and it's got more fight behind it than some of these other individuals that are selling these ridiculously overpriced courses that don't really amount to a hill of beans, or worse, get you upside down and in more trouble than it's worth. These are actual ways of combating some of this nonsense. It doesn't
Right.
have to be used just for schools. I mean, I'm using this same course to handle my town council, and some stuff that went on at that level. And I'm trying to give them an out and say, listen, these are the statutes you're breaking. Here's your own policy you're breaking. This needs to be this needs to be rectified. And if it's not, this is where this is going to go. And when you start putting that backing behind it and showing them that you're not just a bag of wind, or get up there and yell and what have you, then the tempo and the conversation changes drastically, and they actually start listening to what you have to say.
When they get something from me, they meaning government, uh, I want them to know and to say it to themselves in the back of their mind. Everybody involved in this has their sleeves rolled up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different day when you litigate like I do. First things first, who committed a crime? Okay, that's what I want to know first. Is
Yep.
who do I file a criminal complaint against? Here's a good reason to know. You have the right to arrest a felon with any necessary force from coast to coast. Check your state law. It's regulated by state law, but it's a common law right on wevgov.com. wevgov.com. You'll find a page devoted to citizens arrest with a quote from all 12 circuits about citizens arrest. Then go get your state's law and figure out what has to happen before you get that right in your state. And you ring the felony bell on them saying you committed this felony and this felony. When would be a good time to arrest you? Your Honor. Your Honor.
Yep.
Would you like to be arrested at the judge's award banquet or at the high school when your daughter has her volleyball game? Talk to me, Your Honor.
Yep.
And so I push until they commit a felony. And then I switch totally offensive. When would be a good time to arrest you? Because it's all briefed. It's covered with case law and statute. Everything is in the box. I just happen to look further into the box to find out that, hey, there's remedy everywhere. There's remedy everywhere. And when you track all these different places you can get remedy, ideas happen.
Yep. So, Dave, would you be up to answering a few questions? We're at about an hour mark. I don't mind going any longer. I'm good with going longer. It's how much time you have. But we got a few questions in the chat. Can you see them on your end by any chance?
Let's see.
I can put them up on screen here. The first one
comments. Yes.
All right. So the first one here is from Natasha. She says, how do we file our taxes in light of all this information? Is there someone that can help file taxes so that our hard-earned money doesn't get stolen from the U.S. government?
The single best way is a home business. There'll be X number of square feet you can write off of your house as devoted to business. There are expenses that are common that a lot of people don't take advantage of. You go to the experts and they're going to know what deductions they can defend you against if you were to file returns. Yep. And that's not an arena where I do my work. I try to abate criminal charges or a possible indictment. So I'm not really in the same box. Whereas H&R Block, Swift Tax, I can't remember the name of the others, but yeah, they will have dealt on behalf of hundreds of people just like you, and so they've seen the results that hundreds of people have gotten when they've been in exactly your situation. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know what to do. I know what will keep you out of the deepest trouble. And because the law doesn't matter. I've proven it and proven it and proven it. So the last thing I'd do is tell you to lock horns with the government that sends innocent people uh, as a party favor.
Right. And that's something I
So
say on this channel a lot is that, everything that we do on this channel, I try to do it in a way that we have multiple layers of defense and that we stay out of the court system because none of us have pockets as deep as the government. And then the second thing I always say is that, having a side hustle, having that business not only brings in other streams of income for people so they can maybe prepare more, maybe they want to get into homesteading. It allows them to do that type of stuff, but you'll also always pay less taxes legally by owning a business than you will as a W-2 employee. So having that side hustle where you can, write off all those, legitimate write-offs that you can, you'll always retain more money than you would if you were just a W-2 employee. And the tax code is written for people that own businesses. That's my outlook on it is that, all this code is written of, how to take deductions and what you can do and then, what you can't do. And I think, like you said, having that business and writing off square footage of your house, internet, cell phone usage, all those different things that go along with owning a business is probably the best way to stay out of, like you said, locking horns with the government, because who has time to do that? We only got one go around on this planet, and who wants to deal with that the whole life?
and it's a great introduction for your children to entrepreneurialism, self-employment, self-reliance. Start
Yep.
a home business. And
Yep.
something that's going to
100%.
become more and more popular is raising chickens on a space as big as a parking space in your basement. You can harvest a chicken per week.
Yep.
Just little things you got to know. The next question, I'm very curious. My take on David Wynn Miller and Russell J. Gold. Never heard of Russell J. Gold and their research on parse syntax, tax law. I've watched David Wynn Miller. Now he's deceased. I watched the performance of his documents in one criminal case, and the guy was so profoundly naive and ill-educated about the law that I tell jokes about him. And it's not nice to find levity in the misfortune of others in front of them.
Yep.
So I wait to, so I wait, and then David Wynn Miller and all the Patriot movement. It doesn't work. It didn't work. I just watched a tax criminal case in South Carolina. The guy tried the multiple successive affidavits in commerce,
Yep.
and he also looked up the CUSIP and bond numbers for his indictment and pulled all that on the judge, as well as the motions that I filed for his case. Nothing works, and they won't give you a reasoning for their decision. So you're up against judges that are owned lock, stock, and barrel by every taxman. The taxman always wins. To becoming a sovereign national. You don't become a sovereign national until the government says a sovereign national exists, and they aren't willing to give you that. You can make your best argument and fight with your papers and do your best, fight your hardest, but the government wins in tax cases, and the citizen loses in criminal cases because they simply won't hear of it.
Yep.
And
That's true.
there are no citizens out there equipped to defend you because they're just as ignorant as everybody else. Give me a break. I just watched a video from David Champion a few weeks ago where he says, and then you have Chapter 21, FICA, which most Americans mistakenly deem to be part of Social Security. Well, I got news for you. Chapter 21 is Social Security that employees pay. It's FICA. And that finding was in my 1994 treatise. They got no excuse for ignoring me for 35 years. No excuse. And when you sit them down and talk about what they do for a couple of minutes, you can see me wrapping them around telephone poles right and left.
Yep.
um, Now, Debbie Golden says, can you post a link description so we can go back and get it, please?
Yes.
That's your department,
I
Aaron,
will.
and he'll outline that for you. Let's
Yep,
go
I
to
will take care of that for everybody. The all of David's links will be in the show notes. It'll be in the Telegram group, the Facebook group. It'll be everywhere that I can post it, so you have access to it, and that way there you guys can join David's Telegram group and everything like that if you're into it. And Cole's got another question here. He's a local, so Cole, hopefully I'll see you tonight
that.
at the
That's
pub.
okay. That's okay. I'll talk to him.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just kidding. Yeah. Because only men and women are identified as legitimate under the eyes of the law, what are your thoughts on the trans movement and what could be considered an attempt to delegitimize citizens? Um, you know, this is so ugly. What confused trans people are doing to women's sports, that I avoid the topic like the plague. I got nothing good to say about it. And if somebody wants to make that argument, I know the government doesn't play fair and I expect the worst. And it goes back to my question, do you want to start a relationship with a government that lives in the worst? And they'll
Yep.
just visit your whole life with their tendencies and proclivities. But if it was in person, let's say I'm in the grocery store or they're on my doorstep and I'm from the IRS, you didn't pay taxes, blah, blah, blah. That would be the place to pull the trans thing on them. But then you get down to serious business after that. It's like, excuse me, haven't you gotten my stationery? That's not me.
Yeah, yeah. Got the
uh,
wrong pronouns. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
surprised we haven't seen more. I mean, I think there was a case that came out of Connecticut with some women that were in, I want to say it was maybe high school or college sports. I don't remember exactly. I really don't have a dog in that fight, so to speak. But I'm surprised the amount of women that stand by and let this stuff happen. I mean, there was a video circulating a few weeks ago where the girls' basketball high school team just quit because they had a trans, they had this dude dressed up as a woman playing on the basketball team on the opposing team, and he was knocking the crap out of these women, these girls to the ground. I mean, I
Yeah.
have a couple daughters and I haven't had to deal with it yet. Maybe if that happens, I always ask, because one's in high school, one's in middle school, one's in elementary school. And,
Yeah.
if that does happen, then maybe I'll have a dog in that fight. Well, I'll start, going after
The,
him. But, they're really, it's sad what they're doing. They're just ruining
the,
women's sport.
the trans boy injured 3 girls.
Yeah.
And if he injured another one, they wouldn't have enough people on the bench to play the important game they were supposed to have the following week.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's crazy.
that's great. Hey, okay, you want your daughter playing basketball against somebody like me? When I was a freshman in college, I high jumped 6 feet 9 inches, triple jump 48 feet, slam dunking basketballs like a college Michael Jordan, 6'3". You don't want your daughter getting in front of me when I'm on my way to the hoop.
Yep. It's
So
crazy.
it's a stupid idea from square one. Now,
Yep.
this is an important question. Apple pie, prove it, please. Dave, please explain the biggest legal victories you've had in the court system and describe the issues. I accept and appreciate that you clearly know the law. I seek practical, proven application. This one is funny. Funny. Go to takefromcaesar.us.
Is this the check?
No,
Oh, okay.
takefromcaesar.us. There's a picture of Federal Reserve Board spanning left to right at the top. And then you have paragraphs side by side. And right below that, you got a group of links. In the group of links, there's one that says play offense. You open that, it's a black web page with documents in Microsoft Word and a PDF scan of the criminal complaint. Al Centraletti was a tattoo parlor owner in Modesto, city of Modesto, California, and the city council wanted him out. So they trumped up a couple of misdemeanor charges against him and said you could get out of town or you could plead guilty. And he had a series of hearings, and at no time would the judge, Lisa Novak, properly arraign him according to rule. And so he came back in for the next hearing. You still haven't properly arraigned me. She says, I'm going to find you in contempt, so help me, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay. And he shut up and comes in the next time, says, you still haven't arraigned yourself. And she goes, I find you to be mentally incompetent. Here's the name of 2 doctors. Your next hearing's next Tuesday. I order you to see these 2 specialists before next week's hearing. You have to go see Dr. Smith and Dr. Samuels. Okay. And he left and went to his own shrink. The guy was tattooed from head to toe. Okay, he was the owner of a tattoo parlor, owner. He had tattoos in places you can't see in the shower, and piercing, all that stuff. And here he is sitting in court, and the judge comes in and says, hey, I got a letter here from Dr. Davidson and Divinian that says you didn't go to see them. Do you have an excuse? Well, the excuse is he was ordered to go see Samuelson's and Smith. And so, yeah, he's got an excuse for not seeing those 2 doctors. Those aren't the 2 he was ordered to go see. So anyway, she goes, do you have an excuse for not going to see them? He says, yeah. Do you have an excuse for not recusing yourself? She goes, remand him into custody. And the 2 county sheriff bailiffs grabbed him and took him to jail, $800 to bail him out. And he was accompanied that day by a court watcher, Craig, who watched the proceedings. He'd gone to all this guy's hearings. He lived locally there in San Mateo County. And he says, yeah, Al sure got the short end of the stick today. Got arrested for contempt of court. And he outlines that he had his own note from his own shrink. And the judge says, why didn't you go to these 2 doctors? Those weren't the 2 doctors he's ordered to go see. I said, I've heard enough. Did you tape record the proceedings? This is in another century almost. It was 2007. And he says, yeah. I said, dub the tape and overnight me a copy. This is a Monday afternoon. So Tuesday afternoon, I received a cassette tape in overnight envelope and played it. It's a 2-minute hearing. And you can hear the cuffs go on. And it was exactly as he said, a 2-minute hearing, and he's in custody, and that was the end of it. Tuesday afternoon. On Friday afternoon, they had those documents in hand through their email, and they were filing those documents that are on that page. I went to take from Caesar.us. I scroll down just below those 2 paragraphs near the top of the page, and there's a group of links. One says play offense. And so he filed that state criminal complaint for battery and extortion because they're demanding bail. He wasn't in contempt of court. If they'd have stopped and given him his constitutional right of allocution to tell the court, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be in contempt of court. It was just that I thought, and that's an attempt to mitigate the damages they otherwise would have imposed for contempt of court. It's a constitutional right, and he didn't get it. So there's a count of conspiracy against rights, federal, and battery and kidnapping on the state level. And I wrote the complaint with the facts inside. He files it into a crosstown court against the judge and the 2 bailiffs, and then puts his federal criminal complaint on top of his stamped copies and files it with the Department of Justice and has them stamp all his remaining copies. And then he puts his claim against the county for damages for false imprisonment, unreasonable seizure, and serves that on risk management and gets them to stamp all his copies, then takes all of that, puts an affidavit of prejudice against the judge on top of it, and files it into his case and gets his remaining 2 or 3 copies, stamp received. So now the judge is facing life imprisonment with the possibility of parole because no one was injured in the kidnapping. And he filed these, and that was Friday afternoon. And then he goes to court on Tuesday for his next hearing, 9:30 in the morning. And everybody's sitting in the courtroom waiting for the judge. And listen to the interview of the court watcher that's on that page. There's a 60-minute audio tutorial about what we did to that judge. And listen to him describe the demeanor of the judge. He said she came in like she was mounted on a pole, straight up and down, and sat very rigidly down in the chair and turned toward the peanut gallery and said, "Good morning, Mr. Cincinnati. Your rights are very important to us here at the court, and we want you to know that all of us will always act to uphold your rights. I've assigned this case to Judge so-and-so. Your next hearing is next Tuesday at 9:30. Stood up stiff as a pole, turned, and walked out like a robot. And he says when they left the court, they stopped on the front steps of the court and collapsed. They're laughing so hard they were crying at the effect it had on the judge. And they finally stood up after a few minutes and went to the car. And he says, pulling away from the curb, he was dangerous behind the wheel. He was still laughing so hard. And the next hearing, Tuesday, I had predicted what was going to happen. It's exactly what happened. I said, okay, now the next judge, he's going to come in. And in his head, he's thinking, I don't need a complaint like that filed against me. I don't need my name on a document like that. What can I do for you, Mr. Cincinnati? And the public defender that he didn't even ask for stands up. He goes, Your Honor, I'm so-and-so here to represent Mr. Cincinnati. It seems there's been a violation of his rights to speedy trial. And the judge looks at the prosecutor and says, is this true? And the prosecutor says, I'll check on it. I'll get back to you this afternoon. And he gets a phone call from that public defender later on that afternoon and says, yeah, I got a call from the prosecutor. They've dropped the case. Cool. Cool. Just calm things down. Get another judge in here instead of Wicked Witch of the West. And and at least the court, my only assignment was to get rid of the judge. It wasn't to win the case. And so my judge was over because of the complaining I did. And they're right there on that page. Here's another one. You may have heard in 2000, 2001, across the United States, gifting clubs were sued under the Unfair Trade Practices Act by counties and states, and they were prosecuted by counties as pyramid schemes and criminal actions. And some people in probably January of 2001 contacted me. They were in Oregon. I'm here in the Seattle area. They said, yeah, we got an advocate, and he wrote a petition for a declaratory judgment for us to file in County Superior Court, asking the court to declare in advance of any trouble that our activities in this club are lawful. And we went and filed this lawsuit, and the state countersued. So all five of us are defendants in a lawsuit that the state brought against us as a counterclaim, and our advocate, Roger, ran away and left us with this lawsuit. I said, oh man, that's a tough one. Yeah, I'll take your case. And so 8 months of litigation back and forth. They don't meet the definition of pyramid promotional scheme, and this charge is out of line. And 8 months till it finally came down to the state's motion for summary judgment and my counter motion for summary judgment against them. And 4 of the 5 were dismissed for a lack of willfulness. Byron says, I love hearing stories about criminal complaints. The first criminal action I ever tried to vacate was a misdemeanor for basically disorderly conduct in the guy's own basement. And, there's no winning. And he pled guilty. And then let me see, how did the string of events go? I think he pled guilty to 4th degree assault because just outside his locked bedroom in the hallway. He raised his finger to the cop and said, "Where do you get off ordering me around in my own house?" Didn't touch the cop, but they called that a threat to touch the cop, a fourth-degree assault, the
Jeez.
littlest you can get without just piddling on someone's leg. And so he says, "How do I get rid of this?" And I wrote him up a motion to vacate, and in the interest of justice, the judge vacated the criminal action. Uh, there was a criminal action, 6 or 7 counts for evasion of state taxes in Kentucky, and Travis West was the defendant. And I wrote a criminal complaint against the director of revenue and his inspector and the prosecutor, because they all know that Travis West had gone on record with his explanation of how the law doesn't apply to him. That means he's not willful. But the prosecutor went to a grand jury and said he's willful and got an indictment. So he called me at 6:30 in the evening on a Monday. At 8:30 in the evening on Tuesday, that's 26 hours later, he had a 25-page criminal complaint for kidnapping and conspiracy against rights, and affidavit of sorts, and filed that into his case. It named the director of revenue, his prosecutor, and his inspector as co-conspirators in this capital offense. A conspiracy against rights that includes an attempted kidnapping or a kidnapping is a capital offense, 18 U.S.C. 241. And filed that into the case. And it didn't seem to impress them. They already had the jury verdict. So I wrote a clemency request to then Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin, saying this guy's innocent, and they're taking him to trial without an attorney, because he tried 28 different attorneys. 4 of them responded, and all 4 of them said, "I'm not going to take your case." So nobody would take his case. They took him to trial without an attorney. And so I wrote a pardon request based on that, with my own signature on it, from me to the governor, saying, "Look what they're doing to this guy over here in your court. You're governor, right? Well, they're dragging you right into it, because now you know about it, and if you don't do anything, you're complicit." Hello? Smelling salts? They let Travis West stay out on his own recognizance on a payment plan for 7 counts of tax evasion, 7 felony counts. Wow. And I claim credit for that. He didn't get it in writing that this request for a pardon did the job, but tax defendants go to jail, period.
Yep.
And here, I wrote this. He was allowed to stay out of jail. That's a very sweet story. And the last one I'll tell you is, "Hey, pull over." This guy pulls over. They said, "We saw you pull over for that woman back there. She's a vice prostitute substitute, and you're hereby under arrest for soliciting her for prostitution." And he told me, he says, "All I did was pull over. She waved me over to the curb. I thought she might need help with something." And she leans in the window and goes, "This, that, and the other thing for $20. I said, "Get lost," and drove away. And the cops pulled me over because she flagged me. And they stole $12,000 from me when they arrested me. And I had to plead guilty just to stay out of jail. I paid a $392 fine in Federal Reserve notes to stay out of jail. And now I'm on probation. I can't go into that area. It's called a SOAP area. Stay out of areas of prostitution. So he was barred from going to that place. And then they mailed him a notice. "Hey, you're seen in a SOAP area. Get your butt in here. We're going to take away your probation." And he comes to me. He says, "This is happening over there." I said, "Oh, that's no good. But you already pled guilty. My pen isn't that sharp. I'll do what I can. I got one argument." And I argued in brief that, hey, this court accepted 392 Federal Reserve notes from me. the federal Constitution says you can't deal in anything other than gold or silver. The state Constitution says that the federal Constitution is supreme law of the land. You can't do anything that the state can't do. You're just a municipality. Answer me this. It was a petition for a writ of precipice, for a writ of instruction about an existing judgment. When you demanded Federal Reserve notes from me, did you engage in official misconduct? Because that's a crime. You're not allowed to handle Federal Reserve notes. Did you commit this crime, extortion, when you demanded property from me you're not allowed to handle? And I went through the criminal code asking him, did you commit this crime, this crime, this crime? And it also demanded that there be an attorney at the hearing. So he goes in for the hearing, and the judge says, now, Mr. So-and-so, you were seen in a soap area. And per my coaching, he says, hold it, Your Honor. I demand a hearing on my petition for a writ of precipice. I haven't had a hearing yet. And I demanded there be an attorney here. And I don't have an attorney. And the judge pushes his glasses up his nose and looks page by page through the petition for a writ. He goes, this issue's dismissed. And so the guy gets outside the courthouse. He goes, hold it. This issue or this case? And he goes back into the courtroom, and they're hearing another case, and he whispers to the clerk, does he mean this issue or this case? And the judge says, what, you want it in writing? Yeah, sure. And the judge grabs an order in triplicate, scribbles it out, takes the defendant's copy, and throws it at him. Without even being asked, he vacated the conviction rather than talk about whether or not a city can handle Federal Reserve notes. That's a confirmed kill.
That's great.
That's about the strangest thing I've caused in court. Natasha Hawthorne,
Yep.
can we get in touch with you for assistance with holding Washington State public servants accountable for an incident that involved misconduct and false arrest? Oh, I got so much to bring to that party. Email, because the internet's forever. Email Aaron, why don't you? And he'll forward your email to me, and I'll email you my phone number. And yes, Natasha, I got stuff for Washington State. My whole practice has been in Washington State when it wasn't federal. I did work in a bunch of other states for people, but I got a few things for Washington that are pretty gnarly, dude.
And here's my email for those of you who need it. If you are looking to get in touch with David or anything like that, feel free to email me. Also, if you're looking for the course, I can help with that also. If you don't remember the website or can't find it on any of the different media outlets that it will be posted on, just ask me and I'll make sure you get that information, because we're into this right now at an hour and just over an hour and a half, and hopefully you can see the value that David brings to this type of context when it comes to holding these bad actors accountable. There's proper ways of doing it, and if you do it by being on the offense and having some teeth to your complaints when you write them, you're really able to knock these people back on their heels and make them stop for a second and think.
I'll be thrilled to help you, and I preach discomfort because they preach discomfort. And if somebody's engaged in bona fide unlawful conduct while behind a badge or a desk, yeah, I've got a lot of stuff for you, and I'd love to speak with you about it.
That's awesome. Well, Dave, we're coming up on just about an hour and 40 minutes. Hopefully.
Okay. Hey, do you know what a kid from Tacoma gets for Christmas? Your kid's bicycle.
That's funny. Yeah. That's good.
Things you got to know.
Yep. So, David, like I said, I'll make sure everybody has, in the replay of this and all the different social media outlets that we're on, that everybody will have your website information, your Telegram group, and then I will help and facilitate with any people that are interested in getting your course. Do you want to just kind of touch real quick before we close here on kind of the 10,000 foot view of what's on this thumb drive and why it's unable to be downloadable?
Sure. The 10,000 foot drive view of it is on bgbgbg.us. It lists the contents, or you can click on the video table of contents on YouTube, where you just sit there and you watch me navigate the folders. It's 25, 26 gigabytes. It comes to you on a 32 gigabyte flash drive. So it's nothing you can download. And on there is several courses, formal courses, with a bunch of Microsoft Word criminal complaints. You'll look better than everybody else in court when you write this way. And I'm not bragging. It's part of my strategy. I will look better than my opponent. I did that in the high jump, the triple jump, basketball, bartending. And you put something in front of me and I'm going to break my foot off in it. So I'm serious about all of this. And there are certain tactics you can execute upon that really will make the other side think twice before they pull you over again. Leave this person alone for the small stuff. Unless they're breaking legs and burglarizing homes, I don't want them in my court, type thing. And I want you to be that porcupine every time they see your license plate.
Yep. That's great. That is awesome. So Dave, thank you for taking the time out of your morning, right? For you, I think it's still morning time for you, or close to afternoon.
I'm self-employed. There's no difference.
That's true too. Yeah,
It's all
that's a
work.
good point. So I do appreciate you coming on today and spending the time with us. We'll definitely have you back on. I know this is our second time having you on here, or myself having you on. The information and the content is just by far some of the best stuff you'll find out there, especially when it comes to dealing with these situations. And again, like myself, David, he's not blowing any smoke. He'll tell you whether, like he did today, that's in my wheelhouse, or no, it's not. And you're going to get honest answers. And sometimes you may not like that, but at least, you're not buying snake oil from somebody and you're actually getting
I
stuff.
really want to see one of these parents groups pick up that decertifying teacher strategy.
Yeah,
and get an
that would be
attorney
great.
and organize it and let them know from the beginning, you're going to have to go to another state to get a job. You blew
Yep.
it. And I'm here to visit the detriment upon you first
Yeah,
person.
and if more parents and people actually stood up to their local government, the school boards, the teachers that are, the people that are tired of this stuff being pushed, and it's not just the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and it's all this other nonsense. Listen, when you're an adult, you do whatever you want, but leave the kids alone. And the more people
Yep.
that get this course, understand how to do it, hold these people accountable, you're going to see a huge movement happen where it's not worth their time and energy to try to push this leftist
Yep.
movement, because people are not holding them accountable. And, I don't want to have to just sell everything to go to another state to work because I was just doing my job. And that's always what they say. I was just doing what I was told. I was told to teach this curriculum or this book. And, as a parent, that's my decision whether my kid
Yeah,
learns that or not.
write us an affidavit, give us their names and swear to it so we can say we're taking this guy off the criminal complaint and
Yep.
putting the people you complained about in the criminal. Okay, just write it down.
Exactly.
You
And that's
build
how
a
you have.
record.
Yep. Give them an out. You always got to give them an out. And then if they take that out, then you just move that criminal complaint right down the line and you go after the big fish, so to speak.
Yeah, you're still going to have to get a job at a school that's out of the district, but you can stay in state.
Yep. Yep.
I'm not nice about any of this, and there's nothing like a public servant the first time you see them after you complain criminally about them. Their tail just goes right between their legs.
Yep. Well, we have a couple thank yous here, so I do appreciate everybody sticking with us. This was a long episode today, and thank you for coming on, Dave. And we will talk soon. I appreciate it. Any parting words before we go?
Yeah, my stories are nothing. In the chat, they say great stories. Thank you. Get Kurt Riggin on the air here, Aaron.
I'll have to ask you for his contact info.
My mentor, and he lives in Colorado, and I keep telling him he knows 10 times more about the law than I do, and he's courteous about it. He says, I'm not sure about that, but the guy is a walking law library. He really is.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you can give me his contact information and put me in contact with him, I'd be more than happy to have him on here. Maybe both of you on at the same time. We'll really overload ourselves with legal knowledge and getting the people what they need to defend themselves.
Yeah, this show, we're just skimming the surface. And anytime you want me back for an hour or two, you just say so.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, everyone. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next episode. Peace.